3 months after our breakup, I unexpectedly found out I was pregnant. I had no choice but to go to the hospital alone for a prenatal checkup, only to discover that the doctor was my ex's sister. I begged her not to tell her brother about the baby, but she pointed behind me. I turned around and was stunned. Seeing him again was inevitable, and it would haunt me for the rest of my life. Kitty reminds you that this story is intense from start to finish, and it's not easy to produce, so I hope everyone will enjoy it. Now let's get started. Things are quite magical. My ex-boyfriend Grace's face suddenly appeared in front of me, catching me off guard. I wanted to escape but couldn't, so I forced a stiff smile and said, "Hi, long time no see." I knew Pearl was an obstetrician, so I deliberately avoided the hospital where she worked, fearing she would find out, but fate had other plans, teaching me a lesson that human calculations can't beat divine ones. To make matters worse, why was Grace also in the obstetrics department? I didn't believe she was there just to see her sister. "Yeah, long time no see," Grace replied formally, her eyes falling on my belly, her handsome face showing a complex expression. "Pearl, did you find out?" 3 months, Pearl quickly answered, then looked at her brother without blinking. "How long have you been broken up?" "Coincidentally, also 3 months. She smirked, her eyes complicated, a fleeting smile that was hard to discern. I scoffed, "So what? It's none of your business." "You and that mouth," she said, her eyes flashing, signaling me to follow her to talk. "No need," I retorted. "I'm as stubborn as a mule." She looked at me, her handsome features showing a hint of anger, but she silently followed me wherever I went. Finally, I got annoyed. "What do you want?" "You should be the one explaining to me." Grace's face darkened, her eyes fixed on me. Her deep-set features and sharp eyes always made people feel like she could see right through them. But there was no denying she was very handsome. I swallowed hard, stubbornly retorting, "Grace, we've broken up. What do I need to explain to you?" "The baby," she said succinctly. I laughed bitterly. "You're not the only man in the world." Before I finished speaking, her eyes filled with anger. I ignored it and continued. "I was so happy to break up with you that I went to a bar, partied hard, and ended up pregnant. I've already ruined my reputation. What more do you want?" Seeing her still frowning and staring at me, I laughed. "Grace, I didn't know you had a hobby of being a dad. If looks could kill, I'd be dead by now." She scratched her face and stormed out of the hospital. I stood in the wind, watching her tall figure walk away, my eyes eventually filling with tears. It wasn't that she didn't love me, nor that I didn't love her. But two sensitive, strong-willed, and bad-tempered people together were like a thunderstorm. Our fights could tear the roof off. After 3 years of passionate love, our fights were equally intense. After a while, we both got tired, so I suggested breaking up. She was probably tired too and didn't refuse. Since neither of us knew how to love each other better, breaking up was also a way of loving her. I just didn't expect this outcome. After standing for a while, I left the hospital. I had been nauseous all morning and hadn't eaten much. Running into Grace made my head spin. I thought about getting a taxi to solve my immediate needs. But just as I raised my hand, a black SUV pulled up in front of me. The passenger window rolled down, revealing Grace's face, which I both loved and hated. "Get in," she said, her thin lips slightly pursed, her tone not very friendly. I snorted, "No thanks." Before I finished speaking, I saw the veins on her forehead bulge. I turned away, looking for another taxi. If I hadn't been so weak from morning sickness, I would have driven myself. But before I could hail another cab, I heard the SUV's door slam, the vehicle shaking. Such a temper, I thought, wondering how we survived 3 years together. Then I saw Grace get out of the car. Her handsome face was stormy as she quickly ran towards me. Damn it, I thought, my 3 years of battle experience kicking in. Before my brain could issue a command, my feet were already moving. "Sophie!" she yelled from behind. I ran in the wind. Given her current mood, if she caught me, it would definitely be another epic fight. But as I ran, the noise behind me stopped. I hesitated and turned around, only to see the SUV leisurely following me like a turtle. Cunning man, I thought. The window was down and she was steering with one hand, smirking at me. "Sophie, keep running." If I kept running, I'd be an idiot. Frustrated, I pulled the car door open. She immediately braked. I hadn't even sat down when she locked the doors, as if afraid I'd run away. Then she started scolding me. "Are you stupid? Running while pregnant, do you have a death wish? You pulled the door before I stopped the car. Do you think it's not chaotic enough? Do you want to add more drama? Can't you be more careful?" Its beautifully curved thin lips opened and closed, but all it said were words scolding me. I was furious and kicked the car door twice. "Let me out." Its forehead veins started to throb, eyes blazing with anger, looking like it wanted to strangle me right then and there. Then, it leaned in closer. I lost my nerve, but still wanted to retort. Before I could say anything, it reached past me and grabbed the seatbelt. With a loud click, the buckle snapped into place perfectly, but it didn't move back. I glared at it. "Don't think you can bribe me, Sophie. Even if you die, your mouth will still be stubborn." It was clearly angry, but its eyes were filled with helplessness. "Can you talk to me properly? Does it affect your ability to live?" This tactic of being the first to complain when being unreasonable, I had to admit defeat. I sneered. "Who was the one yelling at me as soon as I got in the car? Grace, does not putting poison on your tongue affect your eating?" Over the past 3 years, Grace and I had clashed at least 1,000 times, if not 800. Our friends were all impressed by us. I also admired our persistence. Clearly we couldn't stand each other, yet we couldn't bear to part after 3 years. But why couldn't we hold on that day? Maybe because Grace is a doctor, always putting work first and neglecting our relationship, I said calmly, and after moving out quickly, Grace didn't say anything. Giving up was fine. It saved us from continuing to despise each other. On the way back, neither of us spoke. The air felt solidified. Both of us sulking, unwilling to speak first. At the door, I got out of the car with a stern face, counting down in my heart. "I'll give you one last minute. If you don't come after me, we'll never speak again in this life." "Sophie?" I raised an eyebrow triumphantly, making a victory gesture in my heart. I turned around, expressionless. "Got something to say? Haven't eaten yet?" "No. You gonna cook for me?" Before I could finish, Grace nodded and drove away. I stood there, dumbfounded. What does this mean? "Grace, are you messing with me?" Entering the house, I flopped onto the couch, staring at the ceiling, my hand gently touching my still flat belly. A small life was growing inside, a subtle feeling. My stomach growled, the baby reminding me to eat. I opened the food delivery app, looking at the various restaurants and delicious food pictures, but nothing appealed to me. I felt inexplicably irritated. After a long search, I finally found something I wanted. But I couldn't use any coupons or discounts. Why was it so hard to have a meal? I never had this problem before. After work, there was always a hot meal waiting for me, and Grace would only cook what I liked. It seemed like not long after we got together, Grace was like this. Grace spoiled my taste buds, successfully capturing my stomach and my heart. Now, 3 months after our breakup, I've lost almost 10 pounds. Could I not survive without Grace? I felt like crying but had no tears. The door unlocking sound startled me. I sat up, staring in shock at Grace carrying bags of groceries. Grace looked calm, kicking the door shut with a heel. "Why is the door code still your birthday?" I was silent for 2 seconds before retorting, "I'm used to it, too lazy to change, but I will now." Grace glanced at me, walking straight to the kitchen. Don't change it. Come help me. I pouted. You used to manage just fine alone. You can do it without me now. We've been apart for 3 months. You never reached out. If we hadn't met at the hospital today, you'd probably have forgotten me. Grace turned to look at me, hands in pockets, eyes deep. Sophie, I've never been able to do without you, okay? I tried hard to keep a straight face, controlling the urge to smile wildly, reluctantly rolling up my sleeves and walking into the kitchen. What do you need me to do? Sit here first. Grace brought me a chair, letting me sit, then took out a box of peach blossom pastries from the grocery bag. Have a snack. It was my favorite. I happily took it. These are hard to find, right? Don't just smile foolishly. It's for eating, not looking. Grace teased while putting the groceries in the fridge, leaving out only what was needed. The double-door fridge was soon packed, mostly with fruits. Do you know how to eat them? Of course, with my mouth, I replied naturally. Grace's mouth twitched. Fine, I'll text you reminders on what fruits to eat, so take me off your block list. I suddenly remembered, on the day we broke up, I was so angry I almost smashed my phone, blocking all of Grace's contacts, and hadn't unblocked them since. Grace then started cooking seriously. I held the sieve with one hand, my gaze quietly lingering on Grace. The warm light cast a glow on his handsome profile, giving his features a soft halo that blended with his aura. This was the first time I had ever watched Grace cook so intently. People often only realize the value of something when they lose it. The word loss made me feel like Grace, who once seemed within reach, was now galaxies away. We were no longer each other's only one. A few days ago, I purposely passed by the hospital, and, by chance, saw Grace laughing and chatting with another woman. If it weren't for my pregnancy, I probably wouldn't have any more interactions with Grace. Now, he was here out of responsibility. My heart felt stifled, filled with grievances, discomfort, and pain, all brewing in my eyes. When Grace looked over, I quickly lowered my head, and a hot tear fell onto the peach blossom pastry. I'm fine, I said, fearing that Grace would notice I was crying. I quickly got up and fled. An hour later, Grace had prepared a table full of dishes. Just the aroma made my stomach growl. Grace handed me the chopsticks. Eat up. Thanks. I'll wash the dishes later. Grace just grunted in response, but he ended up washing the dishes himself and even tidied up the house, including tending to the flowers on the balcony. Watching him dawdle, I was about to ask when he planned to leave. Suddenly, large raindrops began to hit the floor-to-ceiling window. Grace seemed relieved and quickly closed the window. The weather forecast said there would be a heavy storm tonight. Looks like it's true. I guess I can't leave tonight, he said, sitting on the couch to watch the news, just like he used to. I rolled my eyes at him. Doc, I remember you drove here. It's pouring rain at night, making it hard to see the road. It's easy to get into an accident. Do you want the baby to lose their father? Grace looked at me with a hint of resentment. I turned my head away. This isn't your child. Grace got up, sat on the other side of me, and looked into my eyes. A paternity test can be done around 5 weeks of pregnancy with a 99.9999% accuracy rate. So, do you want to try? I knew I would lose. I ignored him, yawned, and headed to the bedroom. Fine, you can sleep in the guest room. Consider it payment for cooking. Grace didn't respond, but the TV volume lowered. Even though we had broken up over 3 months ago, everything felt unchanged. I lay in bed, eyes closed, forcing myself to sleep, but I couldn't. Maybe I had eaten too much, and my stomach felt uncomfortable. I had a history of stomach issues, diagnosed by Grace. I remembered the stomach medicine he gave me was in the bedside table. I got up in the dark, but my leg hit the table, making me gasp in pain. The cup fell and shattered on the floor. Sophie. Grace immediately pushed the door open and turned on the light. The sudden brightness made me squint. I saw his tall figure walking towards me, gently lifting me and placing me on the bed. "How many times have I told you to turn on the bedside lamp when you get up at night? What do you need?" I turned my head, subtly pulling the blanket to cover my hand on my stomach. "I'm fine. You can go back to sleep." Grace frowned, cleaned up the broken glass and left. But soon, he knocked on my door. "Sophie, it's only been 10 minutes. You probably haven't fallen asleep yet. I'm coming in." He entered with a bowl of hot soup, stomach-soothing soup. "Drink it before you sleep." I was surprised that Grace noticed my discomfort. The sharp stomach pain told me not to refuse the soup, so I took it. "Thank you." Seeing me hold the bowl and sip the soup, Grace's expression softened. He gently patted my head. "Good girl. Drinking the soup will ease the pain. Don't always rely on medication, especially now that you're pregnant." Grace's voice was gentle, his gaze intense, as if trying to imprint this moment in his memory. His pupils reflected my image clearly, without any disguise. "Got it, kitty." His voice was deep and magnetic like a cello, with a touch of elegance and the intimacy of a lover. Every time he called me kitty, he would kiss me. Thinking of this, I met his deep eyes, his chiseled features, and slightly pursed lips. My heart raced to 200, and my cheeks burned. Just as Grace was about to kiss me, a shred of rationality made me push him out the door. "Stop," I said, closing the door. I clutched my chest, trying to calm my racing heart. Oh my, why do I still feel this way about Grace? No, the plan is to move on. Grace and I have broken up. The next morning, warm sunlight filtered through the curtains. I stretched lazily and suddenly remembered that Grace was still at my place. Instantly waking up. Before leaving my room, I went to the bathroom to freshen up. I didn't want to appear disheveled in front of Grace, even though he had seen me like that many times before. But now that we had broken up, things were different between us. I needed to show Grace that. After our breakup, I returned to my refined self, letting him regret it. I even turned on the radio, listening to English broadcasts. Staring at the tightly shut guest room door, I sipped my milk slowly, feeling smug. "Grace, you should be hearing this, right? I've leveled up since leaving you. I'm getting better and better." I waited at the door for a long time, but Grace didn't come out. When I finally pushed the door open, he was gone. Great, all my effort was wasted. I was angry, but more than that, I felt a sense of loss. He left without a word. Even when I was still asleep, Grace would always say something before leaving. But now, we were broken up, ding dong. The doorbell suddenly rang. I reluctantly went to open the door. Standing there was Pearl, waving a breakfast bag and greeting me with a smile. "Good morning, Sophie. My brother asked me to bring you breakfast. He said you need something nutritious." I was stunned. Grace had left early in the morning but sent Pearl to deliver breakfast. What was this about? Pearl walked in, mentioning that her department had been busy lately, but she promised to keep me company in the evenings. I was puzzled. Why was Grace still having Pearl call me sister-in-law? Feeling awkward with Pearl calling me sister-in-law repeatedly, I decided to seriously explain to her that Grace and I had really broken up. Pearl was taken aback. "Did you guys have a fight? Is there a misunderstanding between you two? My brother really likes you. There are photos of you in his room, and his phone wallpaper is also of you. I see you every day at home." Seeing Pearl's sincere eyes, I didn't know whether to feel happy or sad. I sighed bitterly. There's no misunderstanding. He's too busy. And most importantly, our personalities don't match. We're both stubborn. And when we fight, neither of us backs down. We end up hurting each other. It's better to be apart. Maybe that's the best outcome. And in these 3 months since our breakup, he hasn't reached out to me. That means he accepted our separation." Pearl shook her head repeatedly, looking anxious as if she didn't know how to explain. She sighed. "Sophie, don't misunderstand my brother. During those 3 months he had several surgeries back to back and then fell ill. He just recovered recently. The day you had your checkup, he was waiting for me in the OB/GYN department. I was planning to take him for a health checkup." Hearing Pearl's words, I was slightly stunned. Grace had gone for a checkup. I misunderstood him. He wasn't ignoring me. He was busy and unwell. My brother was really tired those days. "Sophie, please don't fight with him." Seeing that I didn't want to talk more, Pearl sent me a link on social media. "Sophie, I think you'll find the answers you want here." Just then, Pearl's phone rang. It was the hospital calling. She had to go. "Sophie, I once watched a movie where a line said that in a marriage it's not just about love but also mutual tolerance and understanding. Sometimes stepping back isn't weakness, it's a proof of love. Oh, and my brother isn't good at expressing himself, so Sophie, please take care of him. I have to get back to the hospital." Pearl's words left me deep in thought. When I opened the link Pearl sent, I was surprised by what I saw. Grace and Kitty, it was so embarrassing. He prepared heart-shaped candles to confess his love, but the cleaning lady took them all away. In the end, he had to confess awkwardly, but luckily she said yes. Grace and Kitty took Mia to the movies today. My roommate said sci-fi movies are a safe bet. Men need to be cool to attract women. But I didn't really watch the movie. I spent the whole time watching Mia. Grace and Kitty want to marry Mia. Reading each of Grace's posts, I lay on the couch, crying and laughing alternately. How could this big fool be so adorable? Actually, I met Grace in college. He was from the medical school across from my accounting school. I found out he was a med student after seeing him working part-time. His family wasn't well off, but he was diligent and, importantly, handsome. I sneaked into his school to attend lectures and got caught by a professor. Just when I was about to be embarrassed, Grace said I was his girlfriend. Their school forum exploded, and even the professor was surprised. After all, someone as outstanding as Grace publicly announced I was his girlfriend. Then I took the opportunity to confess, and he agreed. We naturally got together. Later I asked him, "Grace, did you like me from the start?" He said, "What do you think? You came to the milk tea shop every day. How could I not remember you?" Thinking back now, we were really quite sweet back then. Everything changed after she became an intern doctor. I was engrossed in reading Grace's little essay when she walked in. I quickly turned over, my back to her. I just wanted to finish reading her essay to get a deeper understanding of her. Grace had bought a big bag of groceries again. "I'll cook for you tonight," she said naturally with a hint of pride. "You wouldn't want to refuse me, would you? There aren't many men who cook as well as I do." "Wow, you're really different from how you are on social media," I said, sitting up and trying to keep a straight face to suppress my laughter. "The kitchen is yours, go ahead." Grace frowned but said nothing and went into the kitchen. I peeked in, wanting to explain, but she seemed to sense it and looked up. Our eyes met for a moment, and I quickly looked down, still unsure of what to say. During dinner, I stole several glances at Grace. "Sophie, if you have something to say, just say it," she finally said, putting down her chopsticks. Realizing she had startled me, she quickly placed them down more gently, awkwardly explaining, "I just slipped." Clearing my throat, I asked, "Grace, is the account Mia and Kitty yours?" Grace's pupils suddenly contracted, and her handsome face turned visibly red, like a cooked shrimp. You wrote all of it, didn't you?" I showed her my phone. "Grace, I never expected you to be so different in person compared to online. How much more is there that I don't know about you?" Grace seemed touched by my words. She looked at me, her long eyebrows trembling, and her eyes filled with layers of tenderness. Since becoming the head of the hospital department, my work has become busier. I'm always leaving early and coming home late, so I haven't been able to take care of you. I thought you didn't mind, so I didn't pay attention. She paused. Do you think it's too late for me to turn back now? I bit my lip and asked seriously, Is it because I'm pregnant that you— No, Grace interrupted firmly, her eyes serious and sincere. With or without a child, it doesn't matter. Her earnest gaze, devoid of any falsehood, moved me deeply. For a moment, I really wanted to nod, but I was afraid of repeating the same mistakes. After all, her work was still very busy, and I knew how dedicated she was. Our personalities wouldn't change so easily. I'm afraid. I hesitated for a long time. Let's see how you do. And you can't stay here tonight. Grace didn't hesitate. Okay. That morning, I had just opened my eyes when I heard noises outside. Peeking through the peephole, I saw new neighbors moving in across the hall. One of the crystal table lamps looked very familiar, just like the one I gave Grace. But I didn't think much of it and turned towards the kitchen. Ding dong. Who could it be so early? It was Grace at the door. I brought you breakfast. From now on, I'll bring you breakfast every morning. You live in the north of the city. Going back and forth. Don't you have to go to the hospital? I remembered Pearl telling me that Grace had a lot of surgeries recently and was recovering. So I moved across from you, Grace said, stepping aside. I looked up and saw the door opposite was open, with my art photo hanging on the wall, shocking me. What kind of operation is this? Grace coughed to cover her embarrassment. This way, whether I'm coming or going, I can see you. She paused and asked, I didn't insist on living with you, so it's a win-win. Honestly, my heart fluttered, but I couldn't let her get too smug. Oh, should I praise you for being clever? Eat your breakfast. I have to go to the hospital, Grace said, glancing at her watch before rushing back to her apartment, grabbing her things and leaving. She didn't forget to wave at me, and I waved back, watching her enter the elevator. I had wanted to ask why she hadn't contacted me for 3 months, if it was because of too many surgeries. But now, I thought, maybe next time. After telling my parents about my pregnancy and getting their approval to handle my relationship with Grace myself, I felt relieved. The bright, warm sunshine bathed me, filling me with hope for the future and anticipation for Grace's next steps. In the following days, Grace spent her time either at work or taking care of me. Especially during my morning sickness, when I had no appetite and threw up everything I ate. To ensure I got enough nutrition, Grace bought several cookbooks and experimented with different recipes to make delicious food for me. As a result, I gained 20 pounds. I couldn't believe it when I saw the scale. Grace. What's wrong? Wasn't it good? Grace rushed out of the kitchen, still holding a spoon, then spit it out quickly. I'll make you something else. I took a bite of the chicken leg and cried, I've gained 20 pounds, what should I do? My silly kitty, it's not just your weight, it's also our baby's weight, Grace said seriously, an unborn baby weighing 20 pounds. Hey, how about I make you some salt-baked chicken? Do you want to eat it now? She really knew what I liked to eat. Sure. Watching Grace's tall figure busy in the kitchen, I lay on the sofa, gently stroking my rounded belly. Baby, it's almost our anniversary. In the past, your dad has always been so casual. Do you think he'll change this time? On the day of our anniversary, I waited at home early, checking my phone countless times. But I didn't receive any message from Grace. This made me very disappointed. No matter how busy she was, she should have at least told me. But what if Pearl was right, and she was really too busy with work sometimes? Should I not be so picky? Buzz, it was a message from Pearl. She asked me to go across the street to help Grace receive a fax. I was really upset. Grace could call Pearl, but why not call me directly? She needed to receive a fax and didn't even remember what day it was today. I angrily went over, pressing each number forcefully. "Grace, I'm not your assistant. Do your own work." When I opened the door, I was surprised by the heart-shaped candles in the center, the rose petals scattered all over the floor, and the red heart-shaped balloons floating around the room. There was also a romantic candlelit dinner on the side table, with elegant piano music playing softly and smoothly. I looked towards the sound and was stunned by Grace, who was sitting at the piano in a handsome suit. She turned her head to look at me, the moonlight streaming through the window onto her hair, making her face look exceptionally radiant. She was playing Love's Remembrance. My heart seemed to be captured by the melody, and my eyes welled up with tears. It turned out she remembered. She knew I liked this song. I had asked her to play it for me several times before, but she never had the time. And today, she prepared such a big surprise for me. After the song ended, Grace asked me to close my eyes. "Close your eyes and count to 3. I closed my eyes with anticipation, counting down in my heart. I could hear Grace's footsteps approaching, stopping in front of me. When I opened my eyes again, a bouquet of blue baby's breath appeared in front of me. It was baby's breath. A long time ago, I had told Grace that I didn't like roses, but preferred baby's breath. It seemed she had always remembered what I said. I took the bouquet with satisfaction. "It smells so good, doesn't it?" Grace was puzzled. "I can only smell a faint scent. Smell it yourself." As Grace leaned closer, I stood on tiptoe and kissed her on the cheek as a reward for her effort tonight. She didn't let me down. Grace's eyes widened slightly, seemingly surprised by my initiative. "So, did I pass? Tell me, which anniversary is this?" "The 4th anniversary. You passed." This anniversary was particularly special for me. After all, such special days need to be valued by both parties to become meaningful. I used to look forward to our time together, never expecting Grace to go to such lengths to prepare a surprise like this. As long as she put her heart into it, that was enough for me. But after she became an intern doctor, she always said she was busy. Later, as she climbed the ranks, she became even busier. Suddenly, I noticed Grace's hand tremble slightly. "Pfft," I laughed out loud at her scared expression. "What are you doing? Did I scare you?" Grace frowned. "Did I forget something?" "No, today is just an ordinary day. You should go to bed early. Don't you have 2 surgeries tomorrow? You need to be well rested. Go on." "How did you know? Have you been secretly paying attention to me?" She frowned. "No," Pearl told me. Pearl also said that during the 3 months we were apart, you had many surgeries. The last time you appeared at the hospital, she insisted on taking you for a checkup. Is that true? How's your health? I still remembered what Pearl had told me before. "Why does she tell you everything?" Grace frowned, took a deep breath, and said, "There were surgeries every day. Sometimes there were so many that I couldn't go home. I ate and slept at the hospital. Even when things were a bit easier, I had to go back to the hospital for surgery as soon as I opened my eyes, sometimes even in the middle of the night. Since Grace became the department head, her work had indeed become busier. Her health was indeed a bit worn out. The unit forced her to take some time off, but she was called back because they were short-staffed," she honestly explained, which was unlike the sharp-tongued and proud Grace of the past. I pushed Grace out the door. "Got it. You don't need to wake up early to make breakfast tomorrow. Pearl will bring us breakfast. She's off tomorrow, and I'm going shopping with her." Watching her back, I suddenly felt a pang of sadness. Was I being too harsh? I didn't understand her before and even got angry with her. Later, Pearl suddenly invited me out. She said she wanted to get to know her sister-in-law better. Now that I was 6 months pregnant, I needed to exercise more to ensure a smoother delivery, so I agreed to her invitation. Shopping is the best exercise. Sophie, do you think giving gifts should be based on the recipient's preferences or your own intentions? Pearl asked. I held onto her arm, with my other hand supporting my waist. It depends. If you know the recipient's preferences, naturally you should buy according to those. If you don't, then follow your own intentions. The most important thing about giving gifts is the thought behind them. Pearl nodded thoughtfully. While I was picking out baby clothes, she was secretly texting someone, looking very mysterious. Sophie, let's go look at some bags. Pearl glanced at her phone before deciding where to go. I immediately agreed, as I love buying bags because they cure all ailments. After looking around for a while, neither of us bought anything because the bag I liked was too expensive. I needed to save up for a while before buying it, so I had to be patient. I saw Pearl taking a picture of the bag I liked. I didn't expect our tastes to be so similar. How about we save up together and buy it at the same time? Pearl smiled mysteriously. Sophie, I think you'll have that bag very soon. 2 months passed in the blink of an eye, and tomorrow was my birthday. I glanced at Grace, who was peeling an apple for me. My belly was getting bigger, making it difficult to walk, and I just wanted to lie down. Grace looked at me with concern. I'm sorry, we'll only have this one child. I waved my hand. Help me back to the bedroom. I plan to go to bed early tonight. It wasn't even 10 o'clock yet. Grace was clearly surprised, but still helped me back to the bedroom and tucked me in. You sleep. I'll read a bedtime story to the baby. When I was 4 months pregnant, Grace had already bought a bunch of fairy tale books. I didn't know if she was trying to lull me or the baby to sleep, but I got used to having her by my side before bed. Doc, what story are you reading tonight? No story tonight. I had just closed my eyes but immediately opened them again, meeting her deep gaze. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly looked away. Why not? There's a foreign indie film you've always wanted to watch but could never find, Grace said, getting up to set up the projector. I perked up, my eyes following her. You didn't find it, did you? Grace nodded. I asked a friend to find it. Later, I found out that Grace had searched several forums and communities online and asked a few experts before finally finding the movie. As the movie started, Grace, who had been sitting at the edge of the bed, slowly moved closer to me. I'll be your human cushion. Thank you, Doc. I don't want a verbal thank you. I rolled my eyes at her. You're getting greedy. Grace looked innocent. I just want to feel the baby. Go ahead. My attention gradually shifted to the movie. I grabbed her big hand and placed it on my belly. Feel all you want, just don't disturb my movie. Through the thin fabric, I could almost feel the heat from her palm, making it hard to concentrate on the movie, especially since Grace, like a curious child, gently touched my belly and then pressed her face against it. Baby, be good in mommy's belly. Don't throw tantrums. When you're born, Daddy will take you to play soccer. I continued watching the movie, thinking I would sleep right after. Having her by my side was enough. But suddenly, the alarm went off at midnight. I turned to Grace in confusion, only to see her standing by the bed with a large square box. Mia, happy birthday. I stared at the box she was holding. It was my favorite puzzle. My eyes welled up with tears. You remembered. It used to be popular for couples to do puzzles together, symbolizing their future coming together piece by piece. I had mentioned it to Grace once. She was reading at the time, and had only responded with a faint, do you like it? I love it, I said, choking up as I wiped my tears. Grace quickly put the puzzle down and gently wiped my tears. Silly, no more crying, otherwise the baby will think Daddy is bullying Mommy. Looking at her handsome face, I couldn't help but smile through my tears. Compared to before, she had indeed changed a lot. Let's do the puzzle now. No way, staying up until midnight is already my limit. Grace shook her head and helped me lie down. Because it's your birthday, I made an exception. Understand? We'll do the puzzle together when I get back from work tomorrow. I pouted but obediently agreed. As she was about to leave, I couldn't help but grab her sleeve, feeling a bit shy. There's still your pajamas in the closet. Grace was slightly taken aback. All right, I'll take them now. Was she really clueless or just pretending? Grace suddenly paused, holding the pajamas, and looked at me in surprise. Maya, do you mean you want me to stay? I deliberately put on a stern face. If you don't want to stay, then goodbye. I'll stay. I choose to stay. Grace changed into her pajamas right in front of me. Her figure was no joke, the kind that looked slim in clothes but was actually quite muscular. Being stared at so intently by me, Grace blushed shyly. Are you sure you want to keep looking at me like this while we sleep? I immediately closed my eyes. The next second, I felt a warmth on my lips. Grace had taken the opportunity to kiss me. I opened my eyes in surprise, and to my delight, there was another surprise waiting for me. Grace had prepared a second birthday gift for me. A light bulb went off in my head, and I became excited. Could it be the limited edition bag I had been wanting so much? Grace looked a bit annoyed as she opened the box. She pinched my cheek. You guessed it, Pearl must have let it slip. I hugged my beloved bag with immense joy. Grace, this bag is really beautiful. It can go with so many of my outfits. I truly love it. Thank you so much. Grace finally lay down beside me, pulled me gently into her arms. I couldn't see the sparkle in her eyes, but I could hear her warm voice in my ear and the strong beat of her heart. Birthday surprise is over. Time to sleep. Grace's tone was like she was coaxing a child. I felt she was already in dad mode. Grace, thank you, I said sincerely. Thank you for making this birthday so meaningful and happy. Grace's tone became noticeably proud. Next birthday, double the surprise. Really? Of course. It looks like I'll have to put in more effort for your birthday next year, more than you. I'll do more than you. All right, let's compete every year. Our conversation was like a childish argument, but it was genuine, hoping to make each other happy. Another weekend, it was the day for my final prenatal checkup. After this, I would be preparing for delivery. When I was about to leave, Grace was already waiting at the door, taking my things and thoughtfully supporting me. Let's go. I'll accompany you to the checkup. Previously, Grace was either very busy or couldn't get away, so Pearl always accompanied me. I raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Don't run back to the clinic halfway to see patients. Absolutely not. I'm really off today. Then what will you say when the doctor asks who you are to me? I still had a bit of a grudge about her not coming before. I'm your husband. Grace took the opportunity to hold my hand, interlocking our fingers. I was amused and exasperated by her answer, trying to pull my hand away, but she held on tighter. Hey, when did you become my husband? Very soon, Grace said seriously, not joking. I didn't press further, just waited to see what my doctor had planned. During the checkup, Grace stayed with me the whole time, asking many professional questions. Although I didn't understand, I saw the female doctor nodding and praising her frequently. She then looked at me and smiled. So you're Mrs. Grace. Dr. Grace is quite accomplished in our hospital. I didn't expect her to settle down so quickly. I was surprised that she had announced it so quickly. Yes, when you meet someone you like, you naturally want to get married quickly. Grace took over the conversation smoothly, helping me up. She whispered in my ear, Let's go. I booked your favorite restaurant. My eyes lit up. Since Grace had spoiled me with good food, few restaurants could satisfy me. This one needed to be booked months in advance, so she had reserved it early. Grace gentlemanly pulled out the chair for me to sit. You look at the menu first. I'll be right back." I nodded and looked around. The restaurant's decor was elegant and romantic. However, there was a special circle of pink balloons around me, with baby's breath flowers as decoration, which puzzled me. Could it be? At that moment, a romantic and light song, "This Love Never Fades," one of my favorites, started playing in the restaurant. Grace returned from the restroom, leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Someone's proposing." My curiosity was instantly piqued. Where? I looked around eagerly. Here. Grace suddenly knelt on one knee, took out a diamond ring from her pocket, and gazed at me lovingly. "Mia, will you marry me? I want to be your rightful husband." My eyes welled up with tears, moved to the point of crying, but I laughed first. "Weren't you already my rightful husband?" Grace held my hand, the other holding the ring. "Sophie, will you marry me?" She raised her voice a few notches, and everyone around us cheered. "Say yes! Say yes!" I gazed deeply into her eyes, choked up, and nodded. "Yes, Grace, I'll marry you." After the successful proposal, Grace moved in with me, and she did so openly. "It feels so good to be home." I really couldn't help but laugh at her. How did I not notice her sense of humor before? It seems like she's changing more and more, and I love her transformation. Come on. I don't even know what to prepare for the delivery room. "Don't worry, I've got everything ready for you." Grace, like a magician, pulled a suitcase in front of me, filled with everything you and the baby would need. Looking at the tall man in front of me, I felt he suddenly became incredibly reliable, giving me a strong sense of security. "Grace, come sit down. What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" Grace hurriedly sat down beside me. "I've already informed the security downstairs. No cars will be parked in the hallway this week. If your water breaks, the ambulance can get here immediately." "No, there's still a week until the due date." I looked at her closely. "I just feel like you've become so attentive and considerate all of a sudden." Grace held my hand, her clear eyes curving into a beautiful arc, sincere and eager. "Maybe it's because I've lost before that I know what it means to cherish." "Mia, thank you so much for giving me another chance. I swear I'll never let you down again." It felt like something warm was spreading through my heart, making my eyes a bit teary. "Yes, I believe you." A week later, our baby was born safely. During my postpartum period, Grace took care of me the whole time. She even told my parents not to travel such a long way, that she could take good care of me. But I was a bit worried. "Grace, you're already so busy at the hospital. Let my mom come over. I've already applied to transfer to another department, so I won't be as busy as before." Grace sat beside me, wiping my face and hands with a warm towel. "Now, in my eyes, nothing is more important than you and the baby." Just as I was about to speak, the baby started crying. "I just fed him. Is he hungry again?" "No, the baby needs a diaper change." Grace picked up the baby and skillfully changed the diaper. "Come, I'll teach you how to distinguish the baby's cries. No, you should rest well." She soothed the baby to sleep and then sat down next to me. "From now on, with me by your side, you and the baby will have everything you need." I smiled and nodded. "It's a deal." After leaving the postpartum center, my parents and Grace's parents were waiting at the door to pick me up. I hadn't had the chance to meet Grace's parents before. Her mom hurriedly walked up and took my hand. "So, this is Mia. My son has told me so much about you, but meeting you in person is even better. Mia is just so adorable. Mia, did you know this guy worked at a tea shop because he knew you loved tea?" "Mom." Grace took a deep breath. "What's wrong? You dare to do it but not admit it." Her mom held a big red envelope in her hand. "This is for the grandson." Then she took out a bracelet. "This heirloom bracelet is for our daughter-in-law, passed down from generation to generation. Mia, you've worked hard. I want to reward you properly." Her mom was so enthusiastic that I couldn't refuse. I always thought Grace's family wasn't well off, which was why she worked part-time. But now it seems she did it just to meet me. Tonight, I need to have a good talk with her. It's great to have Grace by my side.